I've been really privileged to work with a lot of individuals who have had these extraterrestrial encounters. At this point, there are at least 1,400 individuals whom I have regressed to these encounters. And some of these people have been able to work with me quite a number of times because they live geographically close enough to me in Southern California. So some people have had 40 or 50 or 60 regressions, each one to a different encounter with these other beings. So if you add that all up, it's about 2,400 regressions that I have done during the years to people's encounters with these extraterrestrial beings. Sometimes the beings seem to be more interdimensional than extraterrestrial. In other words, we are coming to understand that there are several different layers, maybe many, different layers of reality. And each one out of the third dimension has a more and more rapid and, shall we say, higher frequency. So there are some very highly spiritual beings who are of a really different density, a different dimension. And those beings seem to be highly radiant, highly spiritual. And so people who have encounters with them, even though at the very beginning it might seem very frightening because they don't know what's going to happen or whom they'll be meeting, but they are very enlightening experiences, upgrading our consciousness. So I would like to say, I feel very strongly about this, that there are many, many different types of species of the beings we call extraterrestrial.
Can you tell us about
They don't live here on Earth. We call them extra, or away from terrestrial beings. Some of these beings seem to be more self-serving. They seem to have an agenda where they want to know about human beings and how our bodies work and how our emotions work, how our sexuality works. And so people obviously do not enjoy experiences with that type of being. There are some species of extraterrestrials who are very focused on perpetuating their race, their species, by combining with our human species. And that means that they do a reproductive program and that they create hybrid beings, partly us and partly their species. They give a number of reasons for this. The primary type of reason is that they, wherever they live, they have lost the ability to reliably procreate. And so they are dying out. And they feel that if they combine their reproductive material with ours and create the hybrid beings, that at least some portion of their race would be able to continue on into the future. Now, within that whole program, the hybrid reproductive program, there are different motivations. Some are for the survival of their race, and some of them are for what they say, upgrading human consciousness. Because a lot of the beings out there, and we don't publicly know this yet, but I certainly have ample indication that there are many, many different species of highly intelligent beings in the universe. And some of them actually make their way here to planet Earth. Some of these beings are really looking at Earth with tremendous concern. They see what we're doing to our beautiful planet. They're very worried about our nuclear capability. They know that if we start setting off nuclear bombs, it will not only pollute and ruin life on Earth, but that nuclear power, that proliferation, that pollution, will transfer itself through the solar system and even to many planets outside of our solar system. It's that powerful. So they're very concerned. And they know that this is a beautiful planet with more species on it than all the other planets in creation put together, at least an extraterrestrial source gave me that information years ago. So these beings really want to help planet Earth. There are many extraterrestrial beings that want to be helpful. They know that they have to get us to help ourselves. They can't just swoop in and rescue us like I hear a lot of people wishing for. But they can inspire us. They can upgrade us. They can really raise our consciousness and our concern for our planet and our fellow life forms, and help us to take action and do something to save the Earth.
How would you describe who they are?
I probably have come across about 50 different species of extraterrestrial beings. Now, I'm going by the description of the people who've had these experiences, and in regression are seeming to be right there, describing the beings who are around them. So out of that 50 or so different types of species, there are some prominent types. First of all, they're the ones that we seem to see the most in our media, which are the very short, grayish skin beings with the big black almond-shaped eyes. And they are the ones who very often will come and escort the person onto the craft or wherever the encounter is going to be taking place. And they're the ones who do a lot of the medical exams and physical probing and poking and examining and tissue samples and fluid samples and so forth. So they're kind of like little medical workers. And all of that material is really studied by not only that group of beings, but of other kinds of beings working with them. So you see the little gray beings in a lot of the encounters. There are also what has been described by some of my experiencers as little white beings who are very sweet. They look a lot like the little grays, but they're pure white. They have round eyes. They have irises and pupils. They have expressiveness. They seem to be fully alive and fully conscious and very sweetly dispositioned. A few of my clients who meet with them quite regularly as the transporter beings, taking them to meet with the other beings, they describe them as very lovable, sweet, curious, lovable. I don't hear about that in the public very often, but I certainly have had a lot of regressions where they have been there. And then there are the taller beings that look like gray beings, but they might be tan, they might be 5'7", they might be 5'10", they might have that grayish, bluish look. And they do a whole variety of things, including a lot of healing, physical healing of the people who are taken to have experiences with them. And then, quite notably, there are the mantis beings, also referred to as insectoid beings. They're very tall from our point of view. They could easily be 8 feet tall or even 9 feet tall. They're very slim. And so they look like a praying mantis more than anything else we can liken them to. And everyone I've regressed to an experience with a mantis being thinks that they are really strange looking, first of all, but when they get used to them and get to know them, they say they are lovely, they are loving, they exude unconditional love, and they're kindly, and they treat the people who are visiting with them with great respect, and they like experiences with them. So those beings do a number of things, but not anything that seems invasive and harmful. Then there are what we call the reptilian beings. They tend to get a lot of bad press, and I can understand that because they're fearful looking. They're big. They might be 6'5", they might be 7 feet, and they're very muscular, like a really buff athlete. And they're upright, like our best athletes, and they seem to have a number of different purposes, depending on which species of reptilian they are, and what their particular agenda is. A lot of the reptilians, not all, but a lot of them are very interested in reproductive program and creating hybrids, and they like to do the hybridization in terms of actually having intercourse with a human being. Now that can happen to a human female, where a male reptilian comes and has that kind of relationship with them, and it can happen to human males who find themselves in these experiences coupled with a female. I know several cases in which the human male found himself on seemingly a craft on kind of a medical table, and that in came a gorgeous looking woman, looking very human, and the coupling happens. And in the middle of that experience, the look, we call it a screen image, the look of the human sort of fades away, and what is revealed is that this is a female reptilian being. Now, different men have different reactions about that, some more horrific than others. So there are also tall white beings who might be 8 or 9 feet tall, very slim, and they seem to be very keen on educating people. There are many shades of beings who are training people to be more psychic, more telepathic, to do psychokinesis, move things with their minds, many psychic skills. They're upgrading these people, and they can develop more of a relationship with these people according to how much they can train the people to be telepathic. All of these beings that I have mentioned so far speak with each other and with us telepathically. And even though we haven't thought that we had the ability of telepathy, my clients experiencing these things do hear the thoughts very clearly in their minds. And when they think a thought or think a question for these beings, the beings register that in their minds. So we really do have the ability of mental telepathy.
There's a lot of varieties. What is it about your clients, because those are the ones you know, with the part of past anyway, but there's, of the 2,500 clients you have, what is it? Is there something unique about them that is attracting this kind of interaction?
Yeah, that's an important question. Most of these people whom we call experiencers, because they experience extraterrestrial encounters, most of them have a lineage. That means that they have a parent and a grandparent, maybe a great-grandparent, and also a child, so that there's a string of people in that particular family that has a certain genetic line. And they seem to be following, or some of these groups seem to be following certain genetic lineages. That's why they like to have at least one member of each of these generations. So that seems to be a very important factor. I don't think, frankly, from all of my experience with this, I don't think that anybody in the world could just suddenly be picked up by a UFO or the beings in a UFO. Rather, the people who are chosen for this have this particular reason, that they're part of this genetic line that this group or these groups are particularly interested in.
For what end? What's the agenda? What for?
Well, I think they like to see what happens to people generation after generation. And we, as a human species, are apparently quite unique because we have so much variety, not just the racial groupings, but every single individual considers himself or herself totally unique. And, we really pride our individualism in some cultures more than others. So they like to see the variations that happen. If you have a genetic line of, say, 5 generations, or maybe it's 6, we don't really know how long they've been doing this, they like to see how those individuals, even within a family, who, of course, the families will intermingle every time there's an adult who will marry and connect with another genetic lineage. So it's quite fascinating, because from what I can see so far about the other species is that each species is much more homogeneous within that species. There isn't, it seems, from what we can tell, there isn't a tremendous variation of, let's say, reptilians or the mantis beings or the tall whites or the small grays. They all seem to be much like each other within their own species. But humans are so different. And this may be true from what I can see, that of all the species of intelligent beings in creation, in the cosmos, we have the most variation amongst our own species. That is the human species, as well as more millions of life forms than all of the other planets put together, it has been suggested to me.
Amongst ourselves, we're so diverse.
Yeah.
Is that, do you believe that's an influence from outside, or is that not influence from outside?
Great. God, these are good questions. I think that the difference between the human races have a lot to do with the fact that over the millennia of time, as far as we can tell, that they were influenced by different extraterrestrial races. Now, I know a lot of people don't like that thought, they're not comfortable with that, but I think that more and more indication and even evidence is coming out that in our incredibly long history as human beings, that there has been a lot of interaction with some of these other beings, genetic influencing, combining reproductively in various ways with us humans. And so take the Asian race, they may have had more influence from a particular group of extraterrestrial beings than, say, the English, Scottish, Northern European, Scandinavian people, who may have had more of a different kind of influence from other species, and so on with the black races and the Native American races, that we are learning more and more about this all the time, that there seems to be real influence that's happened through the thousands, many thousands of years from these other beings. Now, it would be wonderful, in my opinion, it would be wonderful if we, different species, shall we say, different races, who consider ourselves human, living on Earth, it'd be wonderful if we recognize that we've all been influenced, maybe way, way back, by other cultures, other species of beings, and that we're all unique. There's a reason for all this. And so why can't we respect each other more and appreciate these differences? Yeah.
You used the word many times throughout our session here so far, agenda. That the alien beings come with an agenda in their interactions, and you also described a big variety of them.
Mm-hmm.
What have you grasped from your clients as to what is there an alien agenda? Are there multiple alien agendas? What is the alien agenda in your experience?
I think there are multiple alien agendas, depending on which group of extraterrestrials we're talking about. And you might notice that I avoid the word alien because some of these beings are so wonderful, so high-minded, so much more advanced, not only technologically, we know that, if they can get here, but mentally and spiritually, socially, with conscience. And some of them have the agenda of really trying to help planet Earth. And so the people whom they work with, they are inspiring them to carry out particular missions here. And I know many people who really have a mission, whether they've ever put that word to it or not. They are doing the work that they somehow know that they came here to do. It feels totally right. So examples of that kind of mission work, and it's not done with a group with a name. These are just individuals I'm talking about. It might be to work for ecological improvement. It might be to work for weather improvement, which goes along with ecology. It might work with healing people, healing individuals. Some of the experiencers, as I call them, have been trained by the extraterrestrials to even heal very large populations of human people after Earth catastrophes. I mean, that's an extraordinary skill that I don't think any of us, or many of us, had realized would be possible for one human being. Some of them want to inspire their people, they have these encounters with, to bring out the truth, to bring out the information that we are not alone in the universe, far from it. We have a whole panoply of other beings out there, from our point of view, out there in the universe. And they know that we really need an upgrading of consciousness. We need to be more spiritually oriented. That doesn't mean specifically religiously oriented, and there's nothing wrong about that, but there's a larger spirituality. And they would like to see more human beings. In fact, they'd like to see the whole race of human beings having more of that spiritual appreciation for the fact that we're all part of the source. We may tend to call that God, and different cultural religious groups may refer to that in some other way, and representatives of those religions. But they understand that we are all part of what we would call God. And they don't necessarily have that word for God, but they'll use words like source, creation, the all, the one. And they would like to see us develop that more spiritual consciousness.